This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with none other than former WCW superstar, former WWE superstar, son of the legendary Bill Watts, none other than Eric Watts, who also had a successful college football career. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing awesome, my friend. I'm doing awesome.
You're still keeping in good shape. What does your shirt say there?
Collar and elbow.
Al Snow's company.
Hey, listen. I saw him. I think this is an older shirt because my dad and I were at WrestleMania, New Orleans, a few years back, and only time I've done a father-son autograph session with him. And Snow came by, and I mean, I grabbed merch as fast as I can. He hooked me, my dad up, the whole thing. So God bless him.
That's pretty good. And I understand your dad had you working for him pretty young, doing many duties for Mid South Wrestling. But what are some of your earliest memories of growing up the son of Bill Watts before you even started working for him?
Before I started working for him, probably the craziest memory was my dad was known. My dad was known to be a hard person in the ring as a boss, but he also, his early days, he was known as a ferocious person in the streets as far as fights. And so my dad had all of his kids do certain things. Like I played football, but it was mandatory that we punted and kicked so that when we get in a street fight, we could kick someone in the face, harder, and the ribs harder. He wanted that leg strength good. Um, uh, and so we also had to amateur wrestle. Whether we wanted to play basketball, football, amateur wrestling had to be a part of it. Later on, submissions and submission wrestling, all for the idea that the Watts family had to be known as you don't mess with them. And if anyone asks if wrestling is fake, even if they're your friends, knock them out and talk about it later. So I remember my first year, and I can't remember what grade I was, third grade, second grade. And Oklahoma is known as one of the greatest amateur wrestling states there is in elementary, middle school, high school, hell, in college. Matter of fact, the Amateur Wrestling Hall of Fame is in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So it's just known for its wrestling. And here I am, and when you get into amateur wrestling, you don't know what you're doing, right? So I think I might have been third grade. And so these other kids have been wrestling first, second grade. And so I go to my first tournament, confused out of my mind because I'm just trying to learn the sport. And this kid comes up, and I'd seen the brackets, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, that kid's awesome!" So I'm nervous. I'm getting ready for the match, and this kid that was known as a really good wrestler already that young came up to me and goes, "Is there any way that you don't do that Oklahoma Stampede thing on me or Brain Buster? I'm scared to death." And I looked, I'm like, no, we're good. Thinking, I got this guy. That kid kicked my butt. Because I didn't know how to wrestle yet. This kid, whatever grade it was, third grade, he'd already wrestled for 2 years and just handed me my ass. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to be good. I mean, if everyone my first few years thinks that they're wrestling Cowboy Bill Watts' son, like Cowboy Bill Watts is go on the mat, or I know something more than they don't, I'm in trouble. So that's one of my first pushes right in the center of the world.
Did your dad get you a private amateur wrestling coach at all, or have a guy like Danny Hodge work with you at all to help make sure that you would do better in future tournaments?
Wow, you know what? Great question, my brother. Okay, so let me give you a few things. First of all, I can't remember what grade we were in. There was sometime around the sixth grade. My dad got a call from Eddie Graham, and he's like, "Hey, Bill, I need you down in Florida," which was one of my dad's mentors. Gagne and Graham were probably my dad's two wrestling mentors, right? And so he said, "Hey, I need you down here. I need you to book. I need you on some shows. The gates aren't doing well." And my dad just grabbed his kids and unenrolled us in school. We drive out to Florida because my dad's like, hey, my territory was doing great. I can book from, long distance. We're good. I'm coming in to help. And we get down there. And so my dad takes us to this dojo and introduces us to this guy named Hiro Matsuda. And and I'm sitting there, and I said, hello, sir. And I went to shake his hand, and he slapped me so hard in the face. My head was ringing, and I didn't start crying, but like a tear was coming out of my eye. And he said, Bill, I don't know about this one. I don't think he's tough enough. He slapped my head off. So when I got there, so Hiro Matsuda worked with me, but I was also blessed because I don't know if you ever watched Mid-South Sports or Universal Wrestling. My dad was so big on promoting amateur wrestling as the step prior to pro wrestling that even at towns and Shreveports in Louisiana and Arkansas, Mississippi, and Oklahoma, if there was a local amateur wrestling event, he would promote that event because he felt like it was also promoting pro wrestling. So I was always at Oklahoma State Intensified Wrestling Camp or Iowa Intensified or OU's. There were people that would come down and work with us. Sometimes he'd bring in some of the guys off the Olympic team. We had our own wrestling room with throwing dummies, crash mats. We had our own wrestling mat with a W because we called it Wattsland. My dad got mad at our high school one time and said, you know what? My kids are the best on your team. We're not wrestling for you anymore. Matter of fact, we're going to wrestle everywhere you are, and we're going to go independent as Wattsland, which was not the funnest thing in the world when your friends are showing up going, oh, great. So you're going to show up and beat us and not even say you're from Bixby. Why I'm amazed that you asked about Danny Hodge. One of the toughest tournaments in the state of Oklahoma prior to the state championship is the Terry Invitational. And that is Tulsa Nationals, but Perry Invitational. And so when I went to Perry, many times I would stay at Danny Hodge's house. Now, Danny was, always pro Perry. So, but Danny's a great man. And yeah, he would show me some stuff, but it wasn't like the time I spent with Hiro Matsuda or any of the Olympians, Dave Schultz, Mark Schultz, Leroy Smith, John Smith, some of those gold medalists coming down and working with us. As a matter of fact, my dad even took us down to have an exhibition with the Russian heavyweight champion when they came in to do a dual meet against the United States. So we were pretty blessed when it comes to that.
So how old would you have been when you started working for your father, setting up the rings and stuff like that?
Again, another great question. Early on, he brought us in kind of on everything. So I remember, I don't know how old you are, but it wasn't until I think we were in 9th or 10th grade before Betamax came out. So my dad would film certain tryouts or film certain things, and he would come, whether it was a reel-to-reel, when Betamax hit, whether it was a 3/4 inch that we used to make shows and send them out. He would actually bring in the family. So there's my sister, and she's 3 years younger than me. My brother's a year younger than me. My older brother, Joel, which did color commentary, he was 2 or 3 years older than me. So he felt like he had a audience representing different sexes and different ages of those age group. And then there would be my mom. We would actually watch matches. I remember when my dad goes, you're not going to believe this. I found one of the greatest athletes of all times. I mean, this guy just has it. I mean, he doesn't know all the wrestling in the world, but he has charisma. And we're watching this guy in the ring, and the match was like 6 or 7 minutes. But there was just something about this guy. And my dad goes, did the wrestling gods curse me? He goes, I love using like people's names and playing off something they've done. He goes, this guy's name is Sylvester Ritter. And we just started laughing. He goes, what do you do with that? And of course, as you already know, Sylvester Ritter is Junkyard Dog. And so he would get our input. Now, I'm not saying we made decisions. He would ask us. And then the T-shirt sales, in the summers, and even setting up the rings. Early on, he would have us walk some of the auditoriums and just check to make sure ushers weren't letting people in for free, or selling T-shirts at the concession, or anything he wanted. He wanted us to see all aspects of business. A lot of times he would even bring us in at the end of the night when the people, the Tulsa Fairgrounds or Marriott Garden, Oklahoma City, when they were counting the money from the ticket sales. So he involved us. If someone was local, he involved us. So I would say, we weren't walking around the pavilions at the fourth grade, but I bet you fifth, sixth, seventh grade, sixth, seventh grade especially, we were walking around making sure people weren't trying to steal from us and the athletes, because, you steal the gate, then it hurts everybody.
I see Bob Cook watching on here. I just watched Techno Team 2000 in a match against Bob Cook.
Bob Cook, it gives me chill bumps. Okay, it just gives me chill bumps. So when I first broke in, most people don't know this. I was not allowed into the wrestling ring. It was a deal my mom made with my father. My father goes to the Houston Oilers out of Oklahoma, but a year before he graduates, so he didn't have his college degree. My mother went to New York, and she was modeling in New York. She didn't have her college degree. Matter of fact, she didn't even go to college. She went out of graduating high school. And so my mom sat down with Dad and said, "Hey, listen, you got the Von Erichs, you got Dusty Rhodes, you got the Harts, the Gagnes, the Grahams." And she goes, "The one thing that I don't see in these wrestling families is the kids having a college degree." And she said, what I want to say is, of course, we always hope to be successful and we hope to do great things. But what if our company was ever to fail? What then does our next generation fall back on? So Joel went to college, and then out of college, he came and started doing the video production, and he started doing color commentary. But Micah, me, of course, we weren't allowed to go and train without any of the athletes. My dad was huge in kayfabe. Now, I never, ever heard in my life. Now, I'm telling you, through my senior year in high school, I never heard anyone talk about a match. Not once. I'd come in and out, and, now I learned pretty fast, later on about kayfabe, man, because everyone would say it even when I came in the dressing room, brother. And good guys and bad guys, they didn't drive cars together. They didn't dress in locker rooms together, nothing. So we had to go to college. So when I was in Louisville and coming out, I had actually called my father and said, "Hey, I want to get in the ring," because I graduated with my degree in 3 years. So I was doing the master's and Juris Doctorate program at Louisville. And he said, "Sure." So I went to Jody Hamilton's school. It wasn't the power plant at the time. And I was in that school 23 days. And then Dusty Rhodes asked me to do a match on the way back to Louisville because I was going to finish up some classes at Louisville and get my other degree. And so my 24th day in a ring ever in my life was in, I believe it's Franklin, Tennessee. The next night, Chattanooga. The next night, Nashville, I believe. And I was going to go, and Dusty got me on the phone. He said, "Hey, what'd you think?" And I'm like, "Dream. I've been in front of the biggest crowds, Syracuse football playing in the Coca-Cola Classic and the Tokyo Dome sold out, Ohio State and the Horseshoe, ESPN. I've been in some big arenas. I've never felt anything like that." And he goes, "Yeah, you got it bad." And I go, "What do you mean, sir?" He goes, "You're screwed." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're a pro wrestler." And I go, "Sir," I said, "I can hardly wait to get back from college." He goes, "You're not going back to college. I need you tomorrow on Saturday Night Live. You need to get back to Atlanta. We got a contract." So I didn't have the matches you would think. So coming in as a college athlete, and even in my even in middle school and high school, my father was all about videotaping everything. And it was brilliant because I can't tell you how many times, I don't care how good you are. Well, in basketball, football, amateur wrestling, soccer, all the sports I played, a lot of times what you think you're doing and the position you think you're in to make a tackle or to make a pass is not it's not what you think. Or your footwork, you may think you have the proper footwork, or you do, or you think you're lowering your waist through the tackle with your head up, and you don't. Without, we call it the eye in the sky never lies, because videotape never lies. So coming in to WCW, I already had my camera and I'm taking videos and going over it. Well, my dad would call me once in a blue moon. He goes, "Hey, let's check out some of that videotape." I met with him 3 times in like 3 months, I would say, roughly, because I was already on the road about 25, 26, 27 days a month. And we never got past the tie-up. He would get so involved in the tie-up, and he usually would just rip me a new one for about 2 or 3 hours, and then like, oh, let's do something else. But I was telling him, I'm like, "Dad, I got to be honest with you. Learning a lot of the basics. Hip toss, backdrop. Coming off the top rope, taking the turnbuckles. I got it. But this whole punching thing, this whole punching thing, Dad, is not good." And he goes, "Well, first of all, baby faces use it too much. You shouldn't be punching in the first place. You should be using forearms." And I'm like, "Well, Dad, I got it, but there's a lot of people punching." He goes, "Don't watch them. Those people don't know what they're doing, because now you're doing it in front of the ref. Now you're killing the cop out there. If there's no cop, then why don't you just punch all the time?" And blah, 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 blah. And he's going into the whole thing, and I understand it. And so I think I was in the business for about maybe 2 months. And I'm like, "Dad, I got to learn how to do these punches." And my dad goes, "Well, I'm going to get you the best kid in the business." And we were down at Center Stage, Atlanta, Georgia, doing Saturday night TV taping, and he pulls me. They have a laundry room backstage. He pulls me into the laundry room and goes, "Do you know Bob Cook?" I go, "Oh yeah, yes sir, I know Bob Cook. Of course I know Bob Cook." But I mean, I wasn't on the road all the time with him or me with him. He goes, "Bob is going to teach you how to punch." And brother, man, that poor guy got hexed because he was trying to show me. And again, I'm not taking anything from anyone. Bobby Eaton, there's so many people that have incredible punches, but I will let you know that from WCW to WWE to All Japan to Catch Wrestling in Germany, anyone that knows anything about a punch, there is one and only one greatest punch in the business during our generation, and it's Bob Cook. Guys would line up, and I don't care whether it was Lex Luger or who it was. If they had a match with Bob Cook, they were looking forward to selling that punch better than anyone else. I mean, you would sit back and watch the monitors to see how awesome the punches were. And so that's how well known he was. But I'll be honest with you. He took me, he said, "Hey," he showed me a few punches, and he goes, "Now let me show you, what we're going to start." And he took a metal door and he opened it up. He goes, "I need you to punch at that about 1,000 times a day. Find a metal door or a hard wood door and throw punches. Because let me explain something to you. You'll only hit that thing so many times, and we've got to protect each other. So if you can't throw it perfect on the door, don't throw your punches." So Bob Cook is the man. And no, I was never even close to Bob Cook throwing a punch.
For Mid-South, we always hear about the various backstage fights that happen because apparently your dad didn't necessarily discourage them. Were you around during any of those incidents?
The one that I will always remember, it was Butch Reed and the Barbarian, John Nord, the Barbarian, right? So the Barbarian and Barbarian, I'm 6'6". It seemed like that guy was 6'7", 6'8". He used to be a cop and just jacked. And those two got Butch Reed and him got into it in the backstage, and it sounded like someone was throwing slabs of meat from about a 10-story building onto the concrete. And they were just standing there toe to toe, just boom, boom, boom. I mean, they're just throwing haymakers. And from what I remember, Butch knocked him down. Now he's on Barb, and he's nailing Barb. And Barb threw his thumb into his eye. And Butch said, you got your thumb in my eye. And he goes, I'll pull it out. He goes, you got your thumb in my eye. And it stopped. My dad lost his mind. He lost his mind. He cussed. I've never seen two people get cussed like this in my life. He goes, first of all, why would you waste a good fight when so many people are out there paying to see one? As they're being separated and as they're being taken to two separate locker rooms. He goes, and you two are two of the biggest, you can imagine, pussies in the world. He goes, because first of all, who needs to stand toe to toe? You take them, you drill them, and you don't wait to pull someone's eye out. You just pull it out. And if you're a real man, you eat it. That was sissified. Great punches, but that was sissified. I was like, oh, wow. Because that's Cowboy Bill Watts, if you listen to his entrance in the Hall of Fame and Jim Ross tells you, and talks to you about it, I brought my kids. My dad hadn't met my kids yet. And I took them and snuck them down, called Vince, and we went down to, I think it was in Houston or San Antonio, can't remember. And we were there for the Hall of Fame. And there's Jim Ross telling the story about how my dad, in a street fight, ripped that guy's eye out and ate it. And then he's banned from Canada for, 2 or 3 years. And my kids looked at me and go, did Grandpa really do that? I'm like, yeah, that's my dad.
For the one with Sting and Dick Slater, is it true that Dick Slater actually flushed him down the toilet, or is that all hearsay?
Man, okay, here we go, right? I wasn't there, locker room, and I have never heard a story told so different in my life. Therefore, at an early age, Sting and I got to know each other, meaning he was wrestling for my father and I was in high school and we would speak. I mean, just such a good guy, such a kind person. So years later, I'm at college and they come to town. I got a hold of Sting. I went down, hung out with him. My brother Joel, at the time's head producer for, then that was WWE. WCW came in town. I go see Sting, hang out, take some pictures. And I think it was there that I asked him, I'm like, man, I just tell me straight. And I said, what happened? I said, because now it's out of control. Now it's he flushed your head in the toilet and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah. He's like, Eric, no, no, not even close. He goes, putting on my makeup. Yes, there was an altercation. Yes, he had a right to be mad. He goes, and everyone knows how tough Dick Slater is. He goes, but he came and he threw some shots, but I was just bigger, and we actually got locked up. And really, other than him getting a few shots in, things like that, other than that, nothing else happened. So, where do I stand? I never asked Rick Steiner because I think Rick was there at the time, but I just heard so many stories because I heard everything you've heard. From he flushed him in the toilet till he trashed him, he made fun of, and Sting's like, Now, the one person I never asked was my dad. So, man, let me put that on my list. I got to ask the old man.
And Dark Journey, I did ask her about it, and she said that Dick Slater was beyond his prime years at that point, and his balance was kind of off. He was having concussion issues, so she said she didn't witness it either, but she found that a little exaggerated as well.
I could go with that. And listen, I know all the stories. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Oh my gosh, that pro football player that played in Longest Yard or whatever, and him and Dick got into a fight, and Dick just beat his brains out. You know, he was a real quick puncher, really great with his hands, and so and I'd heard legit stories like I on credit from people back my dad and I mean other people from 10, 20 years before that happened that Dick was good in the streets. So take nothing from the man at all. And I'll tell you, I mean, there's Mid-South Sports or Universal Wrestling Federation, and this is no shot at anything. I don't think there's any other locker room at any time that could have, as locker rooms are concerned, could have beat the locker rooms my dad had. He liked animals, and all the way down to Dirty Dick Murdoch. You know, I mean, I saw Dick Murdoch. A guy had thrown a beer on him, and then took a swipe at him, and Dick told the police, bring him back. Well, they bring the guy back, and this guy was all of about 6'6", 330 pounds. He's pulling his shirt off, and he went to hit Dick Murdoch. I have never seen something so quick. Dick Murdoch kicked this guy in the groin with full shots. And in between the kick, the guy would lean and he would hit him straight and kick and hit him straight. It was like kung. I mean, this guy was a machine gun, and the guy just kept coming and kept coming and kept on thinking, oh my gosh. Well, when the guy fell finally, and I'm telling you, this took up about 12 feet because Dick was hitting him, boom, hitting him there. He's backing up, kicking. The guy fell. The police had him, and then the police later on took him out, roughed the guy up because, you know, my dad's territory. You know, if you threw punches at wrestlers, then now you're on our territory, and wrestling was real, if you know what I'm saying. And we weren't going to mess around. And the cops that saw it said, yeah, we think that the guy was basically kind of out on his feet about the third shot. But hell, they got him up, woke him up, and then beat him up in the back as well. You know, my dad had a rule, and the rule, I think everyone knows the rule. My dad said, hey, I'm going to explain something to you guys. You want to go out? You want to party? You guys want to have a good time? You do what you want. Don't get in a fight and lose. Because any man on my roster that goes out in public and gets in a fight and loses is fired. Because pro wrestling's real.
What would he have said about that Seth Rollins fan attack that happened recently where the fan that wasn't even a tall guy and he was fat and out of shape basically managed to double leg him, and then Seth Rollins said to the media the next day that he was terrified?
Yeah, he'd have been fired. and that's not a shot, but you know, but that's not fair to Seth Rollins, right? Today's pro wrestling has been advertised as entertainment for how long now? Whereas I don't know if you can go back that many days, but every promoter in the world disliked Vince McMahon for going out and saying that it was entertainment. And you can research this if you want. But when I was wrestling in Germany, Otto Wanz had told me the real reason why Vince went out to tell everyone it was entertainment was because in certain countries like Germany, you're taxed differently if you're like a shoot match, a boxing or an MMA or whatever, compared to if you're entertainment. Now, I also have heard that, you know, Vince was just a brilliant marketer and he wanted to be able to bring in children and, you know, what are we doing? If, you know, children thinks it's real, then parents are going to bring the children out. I got to tell you, in all my dad's audiences, there was children and men, women, grandmas. I mean, heck, most of the time it was the grandpa and grandma you had to worry about more than anyone. So in today's dates, with the way lawsuits are, and it's all entertainment, and they're not expected to do anything. A matter of fact, I got to be honest with you. You know, a person like Brock is an animal. You know, he's an amateur wrestler, UFC. He wouldn't care Vince said. He would have pummeled and beat that guy half to death. And Brock would probably get away with it, and he's probably got enough umbrella insurance to take care of it. But I don't think that's what the federations want the wrestlers to do anyway. They just want the security to keep the people out so that it doesn't happen. So I don't want to throw shade on Seth, but I don't know him, but being scared of any fan, I don't know if I'd ever say that.
Now, what's the worst security situation you ever witnessed in Mid-South? Because I heard with JYD, the fans will get pretty out of control sometimes.
There were some really bad ones. And when I say really bad ones, meaning I remember times Dad would bring in enough security to surround a ring, and the crowd would overtake it, and the guys like they would escape not going through the back. They would fight their way through the crowd. They might go at the front door, the back door, out a window. There was a time Tony Atlas, my dad unleashed Tony Atlas as a heel, and he said, I want you to cut promos on every person here, and I want you to use all your creative thinking about what you'd like to say to everyone that's ever been racial to you. here's your mic. Let them know that all their women are here to see you, and you are a freak, and you are awesome, and blah blah blah, and you're no, and that story was straight out of Tony Atlas's mouth to me about what had happened. All I saw was there were times in which so many people showed up in order to beat him up, lynch him, or whatever, that there were times that Tony told me he was scared to death to go to the ring because he said, I don't think there's enough police, and if enough people come get at me or have knives, I'm gonna die. So that would be one instance. But there were some bad ones, man. When they did the whole Russian angle with Nikita, and the Russians and my father and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the American flag, and when they laid that Russian flag on my dad, I thought the place. I mean, my dad even said, he's laying there and he's just getting pelted, with Coke bottles and stuff. And you go back to the '80s, those Coke bottles are like beer mugs, and funny story. Well, not too funny for my father. Talking about you had to watch out for older people and things like that. And he was in Minnesota, and he was a bad guy. And there was a lady, and I don't know, don't hold me to this, I don't know whether she was like 55, 65. But he didn't see, and he went in the ring, and she took a big pen and jabbed it in his calf. And he went down, down to like grab the pen out, and then just backhanded the person, and didn't know at the time. He didn't have time to pull a punch. I don't know whether it broke her jaw or whatever, but knocked her out, and then he pulled the pen out, and he went ahead and had the match. But he said, the most dangerous are the people you underestimate.
Very interesting. And you mentioned it was Dusty Rhodes that kind of got you started in wrestling. Was your dad in charge of WCW at that time, or was this before he was put in charge?
My dad was in charge at that time. However, I think my father cushioned me from him in many ways. So when I went down to go work out, I had already, I pulled myself from the draft. I was burnt out of college football, and I had already interviewed with Georgia Pacific, which was in Atlanta, and I was going to go to Georgia Pacific. I remember this like it was yesterday. Matter of fact, they said, don't do your last 3 classes, do 2 of your 3 last classes. You'll come in at $26,500. But Georgia Pacific at the time had a deal that if you get your master's while being at Georgia Pacific, not only will they pay the classes, they give you a $9,000 raise. So I was going to hold off on my thesis class, do my other 2 classes, go Georgia Pacific. So when I went down to the school with Jody Hamilton, my idea was to get in the ring and see what it was like to be in the ring. Now Sarge and Jody, they said, "Hey, how long can you stay?" And I think I said like three weeks or so, and they said, "Okay." Well, son of a gun, buddy. It was 8 in the morning, 6 in the night. Many times I would go, back to the hotel and just wash the blood off me. Because man, those ropes tore us up and all that. And I'd get my gym gear. A lot of times I'd meet Sarge out, or there's a pro wrestler. I don't know if you remember Ice Train, Harold Hogue, one of the strongest men in the world. I actually met him at a Gold's Gym, and that's kind of how he started going into pro wrestling. Or that's kind of how the name started getting around. I mean, he was a hell of an athlete. And then you'd eat, pass out, and you'd be right back there. There was no time off. I mean, they ran it kind of like a 2-a-day or 3-day football. And I wanted to have I wanted to experience the ring as much as possible. But, so many of your guys, I mean, this, they go years to training schools, or they have hundreds of independent matches or whatever, before ever having the experience to have a shot. And so you would understand how much are you doing in 23 days in the first place. I mean, you got to learn to run the ropes. You got to, I mean, I don't know even what all I know most of the moves, but I don't speak Carney at that. I don't speak Carney at the time. I don't know how to call a match. I don't, I'm not an idiot. You kind of know the psychology per se, of matches, but yeah, none of that was talked about at the Watts household. He wasn't going, "Hey, there's a baby face, and then there's a high spot," and my dad never talked about that. So if you can wrap your head around it, which I know you can, in 23 days, brother, I was blown away when Dream said I didn't even have anything to wear. I had some boots, and I had, just for the hell of it, I had brought my football pants that I'd cut off as gym shorts, and I had a whole bunch of gym shorts. And so I didn't even know what I was going to wear to the first match, which is hilarious because I get there and no one knows I'm going. Sarge they send Sarge so that I would be with someone, that I'd been around. And I get there, I'm like, okay, so I don't know. I'm not with the guys. Don't talk to the guys. And I got my bag, and I'm like, "Hey, where's the guy's dress?" And got there early, and they're like, "Good guy or bad guy?" I'm like, "Good guy." I know Sarge is a bad guy. Well, I go in the locker room, and who do I run into? Rick Steiner. He goes, "Oh, no." And I've known Rick Steiner since I've been in high school. And I'm like, what do you mean, no? He goes, "What are you doing here?" I go, "Well, I mean, they're going to let me have a match." He goes, You're not dressing in this locker room. You got to pay your dues." I said, "Yes, sir. Where do I need to dress?" He goes, "In the concession stand." So I was sitting there. They got popcorn. There's 3 or 4 old ladies getting everything ready. And I'm sitting there, trying to hold a towel, get my pants on. Yeah. So my first 3 matches in all 3 of those cities, I dressed in the concession stand.
So now I understand WWE is going more for the former athletes like you, even though you grew up in the wrestling business, so you understood it before that. Do you think this is going to be a good hiring practice to get these athletes with no experience and kind of throw them in there like they did with you?
Okay, so no experience, yes, I understand that. Let me say this, being very careful. Most of the things that I know or knew, most of your second generation wrestlers wouldn't know, because I came from learning the business, from the ticket sales to this. I mean, I knew what was involved in the business as a business. I could also understand reactions of crowds and expectations and things like that. So let me say that I wasn't an athlete worried about, "Oh, well, I'm gonna fight for this in my contract. I'm gonna fight that." They're not even thinking about how many fans show up, what can we do for the business, how do we how do we handle ourselves in the airports and the cars and the, blah, 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 so that's a little different, right? But let me use a prime example to you. My son and my daughter went to school at Etowah High School with Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner's kids. And Bronson was a beast football player, and then he went to Kennesaw State to play. My son went to Kennesaw State University, but he wasn't playing football. And this kid is just a beast. He lives and breathes health and fitness and working out. And he is around his father, and I'm sure his father is sitting there teaching him and training him and talking to him. I'm sure he was talking to him about the stuff at an early age. And from what DDP told me, Bronson is just crushing it at NXT. And a lot of people are predicting this kid within a year, 2 years, maybe a champion at WWE. So, I would call that a success. And I don't think anything was given to him. I think he was just a really good athlete. A lot of people ask me, my son's 6'4". My daughter plays for the Naval Academy. She's a 6'1" guard, and I mean, model looks. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful. Now, I'm partial. I'm a father, but she's absolutely gorgeous. And she's like, "Hey, Dad, what if they call me?" I go, "What if they're going to call you? You do whatever you want, but you're going to come out of the Naval Academy in cybersecurity. You give your additional 5 years and start your own cybersecurity company and be a billionaire. That's your choice. What if the WNBA calls you, right? So I would say that I don't think people should be given a go just because of their last name necessarily. But I would also say that a lot of these second generation kids are, I don't want to say a lot. I don't keep up with everything current all the time. I would say there are second generation kids that are great athletes, and they've learned from their fathers and they've watched the business their whole life. And there's something to be said about that. I understand about nepotism and things like that, but I can speak on that too. I've spoken on many podcasts, about people saying, "Oh, did I pay my dues? Did I pay my dues?" Come on, bro. Did I pay my dues?
Do you think it's a mistake that they don't call Bronson by the Steiner last name? I guess because they want to own it or something, but they'll bring out Rick Steiner with him, but give him the Braun Breaker name, which is kind of confusing.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think it's confusing to you because you know the history of it, or do you think it's confusing to every fan that watches?
Maybe not the new fans, as you said. Who knows?
That's what I'm thinking. Like I was there when my dad changed Rick's name, because when if you go back, Rob Rex Steiner started, his name change was at Mid-South. And it had to do with he was a great heel, and from what I understand, he was getting his car tortured, and people found out where he lived because they could look him up in the phone book or whatever, and so he needed a name change. So he moved and did a name change. My dad just split the name instead of calling him Rick Steiner and made it Rick and Rick Steiner. And I know Scott hated it because he didn't know my dad. He's in Michigan and hated the fact he thought it was a slap in the face to change the last name. My dad's also the one that separated the two, and Scott hated that as well. And my dad said, "Scott, you're missing it. There's nothing better than a brother grudge." He's like, "No, you're not." And from what I understand, and this is no shot at Scott, I don't know how I'd feel if I was in the same situation. I'm just giving you the facts. Scott was ready to walk out, and Rick was the one that talked him through it. From what I understand, and said, "No, he's led me this far, and let's do it." And to be quite honest, as they split, they both individually made more money than they were ever going to make as a tag. And everyone still saw them as a brother. So they could always tag. They always had Japan. And so my dad was exactly right. But what I'm trying to say is I don't know who owns the name Steiner because I've never asked Rick. Whereas Dallas Page, his name was Falkenberg. And when WWE was buying WCW out and they were taking over the guys to WWE, you know, it was Nash and it was DDP and a few others that were the last holdouts. Dallas made sure that he changed his name on his birth certificate to Dallas Page, just so Vince couldn't take the Dallas Page name. So I do not know what Vince has as far as trademarks, and if he doesn't want to use the Steiner name because he's thinking generationally, well, in 2 generations from now or 3 generations from now, if Bronson has kids and they're wrestling, what's their name going to be, and is it going to be something that Vince owns? So, you know, Vince is a visionary, and he doesn't think about just today, no matter what everyone says. So I have no comment on that. It's kind of like Kevin Nash being Big Daddy Cool Diesel.
As far as Scott Steiner's heat with your dad, I remember he told me when I interviewed him, he left WCW because of a disagreement he had with your dad. Did your dad ever tell you his side of it?
No. This may sound odd, right? I've heard so many stories, you know, war stories and stories of business and the life of business and all these other wrestlers. However, my dad's never really been one to come home per se and talk about. He's not telling a story like this guy came to my office or this guy was unhappy, because my dad doesn't care. He could care less how someone feels about his vision, but that has nothing to do with Bill Watts. That has to do with, if you're a true leader and you're in a leadership role, then you can't have more than one captain, let's say, right? I do remember a story that Kevin Nash was getting a raise at WCW. And Kevin, I believe, told me the story. And he was happy with the raise he was getting. And he went to my dad, and my dad said, "Yep, you've earned the raise." He goes, "But here's the deal. I wasn't here the whole time before you got here, and literally you have been beaten by everybody and a few mascots." He goes, "You are an unbelievable specimen. You're 6'11". You don't add anything to your soles of your shoes, because you could be, you know, Sid Vicious and all these people had big soles. Look at Kevin Nash's; they're like flat as a pancake. He's 6'11". I used to watch the guy leg press 20 reps with like 18 plates. He's strong as can be. He's a specimen. My dad said, so how does this go for you? So just because you're going to make, you know, $150,000, $200,000 more this year, but we're going to use you in the same role you're at because you're here and everyone knows you as the person that's getting their butt kicked all the time. No, I mean, and I'm not saying all the time per se, right? But I'm just saying he wasn't dead. He said, this is what wrestling is. You have to leave to come back, because when you go to the next place, they won't know what you did here. And of course, I understand people watch WCW, right? And so he said, "I'll offer you the contract. I am demanding you leave." Now, I don't know what the stories are now, and I really don't care, but that's the story. That came out of Kevin Nash's mouth to me. You know, I went to my dad and asked him that because Kevin Nash told me the story, and he said, "Yeah, that's right. I mean, the kid, I can understand. You know, you're loving the raise you're going to get because you're just thinking about the money. But, you know, back then, what was he going to get? A $350,000 guarantee? I mean, or something like that, which would have been big, I guess, for the time when he was there and the years he had been in the business, and compared to what he was doing, you know, 3 years prior to that, sure, sounds like a lot of money. Let me ask you this. How much money did he make as soon as he left? And how big did he get? A matter of fact, it was him and Scott Hall that were the first people that were brilliant. So when they came back to WCW, they put a rider in their clause that said no one can be out, no person can come back and get paid more than them. I think there was like one person, like Hulk Hogan or something like that. They had them. That's an old like sports trick, like you'll see in the NFL. like this quarterback has to be, have to get the equivalent of what someone in the first 5 highest players are, or, things like that. These guys pulled that off. Kevin's a brilliant dude, and so those are the things. But I can't tell you how many times I introduced myself to the Macho Man. I didn't know Macho Man, and I was talking to him, and he just started telling me story after story. Sometimes I'd go back and say, "Hold on, Dad, is this how this happened? You did this for this guy, and da da da." And he's like, "Oh yeah, where'd you hear that?" Hey, that's how it was. I was with Animal, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I knew Animal, and we talked 1,000 times, and then he was sitting there telling me, he was like, "Hey, your dad, when he came to me about doing our gimmick, I think whatever it was the Road Warrior, said, watch the movie. I want you to cut your hair and tell me something and why, and I want it to be, kind of themed on the story." He said, so Hawk did it this way, and I did it this way, and we plugged our head in and said, "Oh yeah," and that was all from your dad giving us an assignment because he wanted us to be a part of it. And a matter of fact, he was sitting right next to me saying, "Hey," at the time, whatever it was, I forgot where I was at, North Carolina. Shoot, it might have been 10 years ago. Someone asked me to go out there and do some autographs. And I ended up actually wrestling in a match. And they brought in the Four Horsemen. I think it was Flair's 55th birthday, 60th birthday, whatever it was. And he's sitting there saying, "Hey, do you think your dad would help me?" He goes, "I'm really close to dealing with the NCAA and trying to, because the Georgia Bulldogs, they have the spiked shoulder pads and all that." And he goes, "But I truly feel that we made them famous, and there's other people, and I think we can take this to pro football." And I think with the right person behind us, we can prove that was our idea, taken from our identity, blah, 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 blah. Would your dad work with me? I said, let me do this. Let me call my dad and ask him if I give you the number. Because I don't care who comes and asks me. I don't just say, "Sure, here's my dad's number." I call my dad. "Do you mind?" Even when I know that he doesn't care. I give the number. And I'm sure they spoke on it because we were at our autograph session. He told me the whole story. My dad never told me how the Road Warriors came up or didn't come up or, anything like that. Right. So just to hear all the people he influenced in this business and then to hear it out of their mouths, it's just mind numbing. I don't care how people feel about him or don't feel him. He's just one of the most brilliant people. And when you're around Vince McMahon or when you're around Jerry Jarrett and they're sitting there talking to me and they're talking about my dad as a legend and maybe the best booker of all times and da 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 da. When you're hearing it from people that he competed against and then worked with and worked against, man, when you've got those people talking about Bill Watts, then it's pretty awesome.
Speaking of Ric Flair, could you go over some of your experiences with him over the years? I'm sure you ran into him in WCW in both your first and second runs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, Rick's a legend. He's a legend, right? And he's a legend. So some of the things are, personal. Like my dad, when we were growing up, one thing he would talk about is finance. And he talked about retirements and 401ks and Roth IRAs and SEP plans and I bonds. I could talk to people about I bonds, and 90% of the people I talk to don't even know what an I bond is or why you would buy an I bond. Well, let me tell you what, your financial planner is not going to tell you how to get in. It's an inflationary bond, and they're not going to tell you how to get it or show you how to get it because they make no commission because you have to buy it from the U.S. government. But they're making about 10% right now. Anyway, enough about that. So my dad was always talking to us about business aspects, right? And so he would sit there and say, "Kids, I absolutely have athletes that have come through here that have made so much money, it's not even funny, and they've all gone bankrupt." And, Flair was one of those people, Dusty Rhodes, I believe was one of those people. And he would just say, "Hey, there are legends out here. There are people that they're the 1% of 1%ers when it comes to character. They got the it. right? Like they just have the it factor. They can work their brains out. They, like you've heard 1,000 times, right? They can do a match with a broomstick, right? The Steve Austins, the Steamboats, the Rhodes, the Flairs, there's just these people, The Rock, there's just these people. But he said, son, that's part of it. That is one part of it. That's one part of it. The other part is, how do you treat your body? How do you maintain your body? And then how do you take and invest and keep or grow the things that you fought to do in business? Because if all you wanted to do was get in your underwear and be famous and have nothing for it, then we got to think about your IQ. Okay? And I've hung around Dennis Rodman a few times, and he said, I came into the league broke. I never planned on being rich. I'm gonna leave the league broke. Well, Hannibal, call Dennis Rodman and do an interview with him. Because that's easy to say when you got millions of dollars, but he's broke, right? What is he doing? Trying to barter some stuff with like the guy in China or North Korea or some shit? I mean, so honestly, I personally know, and Dennis Rodman is a good dude. Dennis Rodman is a cool dude. I've hung with Dennis, Carl and Electra. And I was on the plane when we went to pick him up, to go out when I was training Rodman and Leno and Carl Malone. We were flying into Las Vegas, on the Lear. When we get the pilot says, Bischoff, I need to talk to you. And he's like, what? And he goes, we've got to go to Reno. And the Bischoff's like, what? Why we got to go to Reno? Because Dennis Rodman got kicked out last night from Vegas, banned from Vegas. So we diverted and picked up like 6 of his friends and Carmen Electra and all that. Why I'm telling the story is I'm not talking bad about people on a legend of wrestling from an in-ring workability, character ability, the best of the best of the best. Okay? The best of the best of the best. Out of the ring, financial, relationships, not everyone was the best. I mean, look, Dusty Rhodes, TCW, he brought me in to train and to wrestle him on shows, the Last Stampede. Got his hat on right now. Great guy, treated me like a son, right? But asking about Flair, Flair has always been nice to me. When David Flair came in and they asked me to put David over, and David was like scared to death. Rick came up and he talked to me and he's like, hey, don't expect a whole bunch, but you know what it's like. And that's why I wanted to have a match with you. And I'm like, brother, no problem. Let's do this. And Rick came up afterwards and gave me the most vivacious hug and shook my hand and looked at me in the eye. And he goes, son, I've been watching you grow, but to be able to take a young kid out there and do what you did shows how far you've come in such a short period of time. One of the biggest compliments I've ever had in pro wrestling. However, I've been at some events, I thought I know the promoter real well, and things didn't go real good with Flair, like at that birthday party one. And so the stories I heard, I just shook my head, and I even heard the hotel manager come to the promoter the next morning because he's sitting with me. And, there was just some bad stuff that was done and bad business stuff. And that's all I can say. But I don't know exactly, but I feel like I know. So I'd rather not talk about it because I think enough people have said it. But personally, to me, Rick has done nothing but treat me fantastic. But yeah, there's enough stories about maybe him not being the best business person or the kindest business person. Like no shows and asking for more money before he goes to the ring and at autograph sessions. And so it's kind of like, my dad used to say, hey, if one person says something bad about you, 2 people say something bad about you, you might want to look in the mirror. 3 people say something bad about you, brother, there's no reason to look in the mirror. You better figure out what you're doing and change it. So let me just go with that. That should be able to answer your question on Rick.
Yeah, well, now with the internet, it's very easy to find people saying bad stuff about you. But
Yeah.
Lex,
I mean, and listen, the internet is the internet, number one. Number two, one of my favorite things of the internet, right? There was these guys when I first started, and it started when I started wrestling with Brian Pillman and Austin, and people like he doesn't deserve to be wrestling these guys, and then Arn Anderson stuff. And they would show up just to just heckle the hell out of me. And one of the coolest things in it it was hilarious. So I remember I was wrestling Austin, and Austin, it was actually a shoot night where Austin had been told that he was going to job for me. I think it was like in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Austin told, I think it was Grizzly Smith. He goes, "No, I'm not doing it," which in an industry standard, not because I'm who I am, and not because he was who he was, nothing like that. That is a very dicey move, no matter who you are, because of course, he wasn't Stone Cold yet, right? But he was incredible, Hollywood Blondes, and he just said, "No, I'm not doing it." And back in the day, if you said no, no matter what they asked you to do, your day's numbered, right? I was in a bad position because I'm like, "Hey, hey, I don't want let him beat me." And then I got the old Grizzly Smith, like, "You need to shut up or there's going to be a problem with you." And I'm like, "Oh gosh." So I'm walking off feeling horrible and going, "Man, this is a bad position. This is a bad position." From a business standpoint, you're supposed to do whatever the booker says, and they book it and you do it and you just do it, right? Um, from the way I was raised. From his standpoint, I understand, right? I mean, there's times. So Austin said, "Hey, I'm not gonna let him beat me, but what we'll do is we'll just do a Broadway." And so he goes, "Is that fine, kid?" I said, like I've told you, Steve, because me and him, I think we were very good friends. I said, "You can beat me with your finish out there. I don't care." And it wasn't because I knew it was gonna be Steve Austin. He was just a tremendous athlete. And when I say consummate professional and workout, and he lived it and breathed it and everything, he was just awesome. But again, here we are. And so the hecklers show up, and Austin is just so funny. So he's in there and he goes, "Oh, kid, I don't think I need to kick your ass. They're kicking your ass good enough." he's like, "So you're a baby face?" And he's doing all this while he's calling spots and doing stuff and wrestling at 5,000 freaking miles an hour. Him and Pillman, goodness gracious, and Steamboat, those guys could roll, and they wouldn't even breathe hard. And I'm like, dude, do me a favor, throw me out. He goes, "You want to go out?" I go, "Throw me right in the cage, right on the front row with those guys." He goes, "Why?" I go, "I want to talk to him." He said, "You're crazy." He said, he throws me out, and they're like, "You suck, you this, you do that." And one of the guy goes, "You threw 5 interceptions at Florida State," and he had it on a poster. And I said, "Dude, you're an idiot." As I got up there, they go, "Why?" I go, "Bro, I set the University of Louisville record in the history. I threw 7 interceptions. Get your shit right." And I fell back down and got in the ring. Every time we went there afterwards, they were chanting my name. Well, they got on the internet and said, "We came to hate Eric Watts, but he threw everything aside and he's a consummate professional." So, man, the internet can be so crazy because they can say some of the craziest stuff and the worst stuff about you. But what I learned was, it's kind of like the old Howard Stern, right? If people are talking good or bad, they're talking about you. So, yeah, it can be painful sometimes, I guess. Like I had a rule: if I'm riding with you, you weren't reading the dirt sheets, right? Because there was no reason, and to read them because you're not going to listen to them. We had guys that would just be depressed and dumbfounded about how these sheets and Meltzer, could talk so bad about them and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, don't read it. These guys are making money for saying what they're saying. They're critics, but they have the right to critique. Let people, the people that come to the matches, if they want to boo or cheer, they paid the money to get in, right? So it's a little bit different. So it's crazy. I laugh all the time because people will get on my Wikipedia and they on my Wikipedia, I don't know if it's changed back. I used to have a person that would change the stuff back. It's like, "Eric's from Amarillo, Texas." I am not from Amarillo, Texas. At the time, I had like 2 kids, been married twice. I was married. I
Still
had no kids.
from Amarillo, by the way.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you how crazy the story is. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So this is how Amarillo. I think this is how they thought that. We're in Amarillo, Texas, and me and Dustin Rhodes are tagging at the time, and I can't remember who we were wrestling, Hollywood Blondes or Kevin and DDP or someone, right? We're semi-main event. Sting is supposed to be coming in, and I think Sting was wrestling Vader. Both guys were late, and Dusty Rhodes wasn't sure if they were going to make it. So he bumps me and Dustin down to wrestle the tag match. And Dusty come in, hey, baby, listen, Sting, I don't think Sting's going to make it. So we're going to improvise a little bit. And I'm looking at him going, okay, sir, what are you going to do? So you're going to wrestle Dustin tonight. I go, we're wrestling a tag. He goes, no, you don't understand. He goes, do you have some jeans? I'm like, yeah. He goes, we're going to rip them up. And then I'm going to find someone with some face paint. And I'm going to put face paint on you. And you're going to be a bad guy versus Dustin. And your name is Amarillo Slim. He goes, no one is going to know the difference. So I'm thinking, now Dream's got me going. I'm like, okay, no one's going to know the difference. Brother, man. They introduced Dustin. Place going crazy. Here I come out and from Amarillo, Texas, Amarillo Slim. And people go, boo. That's Eric Watts. It was the craziest thing. So I went out there the whole time, or that night. It was my one match as Amarillo Slim, and that's when that Wikipedia page turned over to from Amarillo, Texas. Amarillo Slim.
There's another fan on here that has a question, something he saw on the internet. Did you bring Andre the Giant to show and tell at school?
That is hilarious, brother. Yes. Shoot story. So it's a shoot story. And again, don't hold me this. I can't remember, first grade, second grade, third grade. So Andre loved, my dad. Like he loved my dad. And my dad would bring him in for some stuff and all this. Well, he was always talking to my dad about, I like your boots. So he wanted these ostrich boots. So I didn't know all this stuff that he was coming in town, that my dad had bought him these boots and, he was going to wrestle. Well, kindergarten and things like this, when you have show and tell first grade, I'd ask my mom, say, hey mom, can I bring something to show and tell? She goes, no, we don't have anything to show or tell. I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, our purpose on earth, right, it is not for us to talk about what we have, but to talk about other people and love other people and care for other people, so let them talk about it and learn so much about people. But we're so blessed, we don't really need to talk about anything, and I'm like, okay. Well, as a little kid, I'm like, nah, okay, I get it. But that didn't keep me from coming to my mom occasionally, go, but mom, can I do something like, can I bring my dad? And she's like, son, your dad is working all the time. Like he can't come to school, and your dad and us about not showing off. I go, what am I showing off? He's my father. And so she goes, you know what, yeah, you got show and tell today. I'll bring you something, and we'll talk to the class, but no, it's not, your father can't make it. And my mom is just the best of the best. She'd already played out in her head, and so my mom came to the door, and the teacher said, oh, Eric, your mom's here. And I said, oh, I got something for show and tell. And I didn't know what the heck it was. And so I got in front of the class, and the door opens, and dude, this afro, this huge man pops up, and it's freaking Andre the Giant. I mean, it's Andre the freaking Giant. And he did the whole thing, man. I mean, he took the ring off, what would be his wedding ring. He had a silver dollar. He'd go through it. He had just at one of the shows, I told the story, at one of the shows, his toenail had fallen off, his big toe, and it was as big as my palm of my hand. I mean, the guy was crazy. Well, they had also brought the boots. My dad had bought him Lucchese ostrich boots, 23 quadruple E. He gave them to him as a bonus, and they were too small. 23 quadruple E's. But here's the killer thing, right? Back in the first, second, third grade, you know how you'd go to lunch and they had the big lunch rooms and you had the little seats you would sit on those big tables. Andre said, "Go to lunch?" I'm like, "Yes." And he went, and they had to bring him like a table, and he sat on the table and he put it in his lap, the tray, the fork, and he sat there and ate lunch with us too. And so, brother, man, if you do not think that immediately I was the coolest kid in the school and the world, I think, to me, in my mind, brother, man, it was done. It was done. He took his shoe off, and the kids, we go in there and put our feet in his feet, and he'd grab some kids by the head, just talk to them and cover their face. Dude, it was the craziest, most awesome thing in the world.
That would have been like national news had it happened today with everybody that has cell phones and stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's the same trip too. My dad worked a promotion gimmick, right? So he sat there and he said, my dad called the Tulsa World, the newspaper, and said, "Hey, I'm gonna take out one of my wrestlers. I want to show you how much it cost, just to keep these guys fed." So Andre, right, goes out with my dad, and there was a Tulsa World article. Don't hold me to whether it was 107 or 110 Coors Lights, but he drank 107 or 110 Coors Lights. He ate 7 T-bone steaks, 3 baked potatoes, and a quart of Jack Daniels. And the deal for my dad was, "I'll bring you guys out to cover the story with one of my wrestlers. You got to pay the bill." So they had to pay the bill. They ran the story, and it was huge, huge, huge news in the Tulsa world. But like you said, think about that. If that happened today, it'd be on CNBC, Fox News. It would be everywhere.
For sure. Here's another internet question. Is it true you slapped Michael Lohan at a strip club?
See that. Okay, let me say something to you. That's Keith Walker. Keith Walker. See, there's some things and stories that should not be told. Man, Michael Lohan called me about 3 days ago in Houston, Texas, and he was asking me if I had any pictures of when I grabbed him and I was going to slam him somewhere. Man, me and Michael are good friends, and we did go to a strip club once, and I don't know. If I slapped him, I didn't slap him too hard. I gave him a brotherly love slap. Keith Walker, you're a bad man, brother. You're a bad man.
I understand you've since changed your mind about Lex, who's changed his ways, but I understand back when you were in WCW, he was one of the guys that you didn't like.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. I've told the story a few times. I'm sure, and as you tell it, right, it used to be so fresh, and I've got to say that I'm such good friends with Lex Luger. It's almost hard to tell the story now, even though that guy is so peaceful and so wonderful. I'm sure it doesn't bug him, but yeah, it was Sting and Lex had a gym. I didn't know Lex, right? And so when I signed my agreement, the first person I called was Sting. I said, "Sting, I don't know anything about Atlanta. Where should I stay? And what's the easiest way to get to the airport, and blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Man, there's a place where a lot of the guys stay called Le Parc Apartments at the time." And he said, "It's realistically, you can walk from the apartment complex and security and all that, but you can walk to Main Event Fitness." He goes, and the access road is perfect right on 285 to the airport. He goes, "It's one of the best locations. And when you find out where you want to live in a house and all that," he goes, "but you got a membership, of course, for life at Main Event, blah, blah, blah." So we moved there. Well, my fiance at the time, she had actually gotten her degree in facility design for health clubs. And so I called up Sting. I said, "Hey, would you mind if, my wife to be works at your gym. And he's like, no, you know, got to go through the interview process and all that. But we'd love to have her here. I'm sure, you know, Barb, Lex's sister, actually ran the clubs. So again, I don't know Lex, but it didn't take me long to really get to dislike this guy. I mean, he and I think it was a double negative because one, a lot of the guys did not like him. Now, let me say this. There's a lot of jealousy in pro wrestling as well, right? But the problem with Lex was he was a specimen. He was a freak. He was an incredible athlete. But man, his work ethic and his workouts and his diet. So I can't take any of that away from him. Just personally, he was one of the most arrogant people I'd ever been around in my life. Like, well, what was the name that Vince gave him up at WWE talking about
narcissist?
Like, brother, man, you know, Lex hopefully called him and told him that because that was like Lex freaking Luger. And he just looked down on people. And the staff at the gyms just really didn't like him. I mean, just didn't like him. So it wasn't like, oh, Eric, you know what? And I didn't care. But then, you know, hearing the wife to be coming home and da. So I was like, man, this guy is just a pain in the ass. And I worked out a lot with Buff, and Buff worked out a lot with Lex. So occasionally they would say, he'd say, hey, I'm gonna work out with Lex today. You want to come? And I worked out with Lex a few times, and yeah, he was just an arrogant person. And so finally a story came to me, and I was leaving WCW, and a story came to me about Pistol Pez Watley, and certain situation happened, and Liz and Lex had left and come back, and the locker room smelled bad, that there was personal locker room. He was offended by it, and so he did all he could do to have Pistol Pez Watley fired. And here I'm going, Pistol Pez Watley is one of the better workers. He's busted his butt. You know, he's given it up all for wrestling, the fans, and the business, and now he is putting up rings. You know, and that's, you know, that's not really where most people want to be at, right? And you mean to tell me this guy got fired? So I ran with the story in my head because I'm like, well, it got to be true, and that's just so Lex Luger. So, you know, at this point, I don't know how many people want to verify it, but yeah, there was a call made to a friend of mine, DDP. I asked him to make a call to a guy that was the head of WCW at the time, not my father. And I said, I'm going to beat Lex's brains out at my last match, which was in Nashville, I believe. And then I had to leave immediately after that because I was going somewhere else. And so got there, and it was basically approved. Put it this way. The person said, hey, Eric has got a great future. I know he's leaving, but he'll want to come back. The key is do not allow Eric to attack him or confront him or fight him inside the building. He needs to do it outside of the building or I can't protect him. And I said, okay. So I went early, waited, all excited. And of course, Lex comes late to the show. Now I'm getting my finish, getting my match. So I couldn't catch him out in the parking lot. So then I've got to be at the airport. I've got to get out of there pretty short, but I had about an hour I could wait till after the matches. So I waited out in the car for him in the parking lot. And to Lex's tradition, he didn't come out. So I didn't get to do it, and it frustrated the hell out of me. Now, fast forward the story, though, because there's something beautiful about the story, is that I just didn't like the guy. Lex changed his life. He went through a lot of stuff in his life. And he's going through the whole Liz deal, divorce, and I'm going through a divorce, and me and him, of all things, end up at the exact same hotel. I don't know why. I don't know how. It was more up towards my house. I don't know where he was living at the time, but to be at the same hotel is crazy. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, and I don't know that he has changed. And I'm sitting there and I go, what room number is he? And so now I'm plotting it back in my head. This is like, I don't know, 10 years later. And I called him and I said, I need to talk to you. And I went up to his room, knocked on his door, and I came in and I said, I got to talk to you about some stuff. And he just, he opens up and he starts telling me about what happened in jail and I mean, just the story was crazy, right? He was in the infirmary because he was so sick. He's doing pills, and now he's not doing pills. He's in the infirmary, and the chaplain for the jail came to talk to him, and he was like, hey, listen, I don't believe anything about any of that religious crap, but I mean, if you can bring me some good food every once in a while, I'll listen to all your stupid stuff you want. Like that was so lax. Like he was making fun of the chaplain, and that guy would not stop going to see Lex and just kept on talking to him, brother Steve, and so one night he was at the hotel, and I guess when he got out, he hadn't changed his ways. And I mean, one day you need to talk to him. I think he felt he'd OD'd, and he felt like something was pulling him, and he was drowning in water, and something pulled out. And when he came out, he believed that he basically, Jesus or God had come to him, and he was on his knees, and he called that Steve Baskin at like 2 a.m. He said, I got to talk to you. I think I believe exactly what you believe. Come, you got to get, what do I do? Do I get saved? Whatever. That Steve Baskin and him became very good friends. Lex then eventually moved into a very nice apartment complex, gated, 24-hour, gym, just beautiful place. Well, I ended up moving in there because I'm going through my divorce. He's going through his stuff, the gym, everything. The access was great. Security was great. Well, about a year and a half later, Steve Baskin gets a promotion at his church, and they get a house for the pastor, and he moves in. So me and Lex now, I mean, we're thick as thieves. We're hanging out. We're great friends. And he came, knocked on my door, and he goes, hey, I got to talk to you. Steve's moving out. I can't have my name on a lease. This is an A property, and with my record, I cannot be on the lease. Would you be open to let me stay? You got 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom at the apartment with you. And I thought about it, and he said, think about it, which it wasn't a hard thing. I said, sure. So Lex actually moved in with me. So to tell you the story, which is kind of crazy, is one, before that happened, or in between times, I did a podcast, and someone had heard the story, and I didn't know Lex was on the telephone. And so I told the story, which I would have told anyway. And he goes, hey, I got someone on the line. He's Lex. And I go, hey, Lex, how's it going? He goes, fine. He goes, and Lex just being so chill and so calm like he is today. He's like, he turned it right into, giving a religious testimony. He goes, see how good God was? I was an atheist. Had Eric fought me, he probably would have killed me, and I would have gone to hell. But because God loves me, Eric didn't get to me. We didn't fight. We're great friends, and I'm going to heaven. I'll talk to you guys later. I was like, what? What just happened? So Lex is so chill and cool. A matter of fact, Lex was living with me when he fell paralyzed in California. So he, not that he had to move out, but he ended up at the Shepherd Center, right, paralyzed and all this other stuff. And then once he mobilized and got out, he had to have more care than what we could provide. And so but me and Lex are as tight can be, and so it proved points to me too, right? I mean, how do you let someone get under your skin? And everyone goes through their thing, and everyone goes through their stuff. So it's kind of a cool story, man. But that it was I had lost my crap hearing everything and seeing it, and I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to take care of it, and thank goodness it didn't happen.
And another guy you have kind of a famous association with is Rick Rude. I guess there was some disagreements with him and your father. You ended up in the end being close with Rick Rude, but for a period of time there was some tension, and then there was an amateur wrestling match where he got hurt. So maybe you could explain the whole details of that.
Yeah, Rude was another. Rick was a competitor, right? Like he was arrogant and he was cocky, but it was a different arrogant and cocky. You know, he was good, all right, but he was also very good at stirring crap up and this. So when I got there, I was a pretty easy target. What didn't help, which doesn't matter, my dad and well, my dad, Dusty, had come to my dad about an angle that had been done before where a young person had come into a territory and got into a fight or match with one of the top talent. And so they decided they wanted to play that storyline out. What's crazy is that was back when we were taping some of the shows. So we actually taped 3 shows. And if I'm correct, I think me and Rick were the 12th match, the 24th match, and like 36th match. And so basically the story is that, he goes and he's got Medusa and he just wipes the mat with me, just kicks my ass, snorts, snot on my back, just disrespects me. But I don't, I fight up, pull up just for him to drown me again. And then fight up after the match is done, fight up, boom, fight, and just keep on doing it until he's just got me down. He gets out of the ring and I do the old dead man crawl to RoboCop type thing. So then we come back, we do the match again, and I got a little bit of spark though. Catch him a little bit, the same thing. Ends up beating the crap out of me, fight up. Third match happens, and we do a Broadway, I think's what happened. And that was the whole story. The story was, I'm young, but I'm a fighter, and you're not going to kill my spirit. You may beat me in a match. You may continue to beat me in one match. But, brother, man, I'm going to keep on wrestling. I'm going to keep on getting better. And one day, I'm going to win. So the whole rookie, University of Louisville jacket, I was doing kind of the Steiner type, college jacket and all this other stuff. And so you can imagine, here's Rick. He's wrestled everybody, been around the world, and here I come, and Dusty Rhodes has got this great idea, and Rick's probably thinking, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? Not only do I have to have 3 matches tonight, so that didn't go over well with him, and but I mean, he was a consummate professional. I mean, like in the ring, he wasn't like dogging me, like, come on, feet up and da-da-da. I mean, like he was coaching. He was very professional. Because once the situation happened, there were people like Perfect and Pillman and Austin and him and Steamboat. And they didn't care at the end who they had. They were trying to beat each other for the best match of the night every night. It was awesome. And so, but the backstage got worse and worse. Well, then Rick really didn't like my father. Like hated my father, and my dad didn't care. And so there was a story where Dusty Rhodes had told me, and so it was Rude that came to have a meeting at CNN because he got fined for something, and he was going to tell Bill Watts just how he felt. And so my dad, this time he's older, but he's still an animal. And matter of fact, I think 2 years before that. To University of Tulsa, an All-American lineman from University of Tulsa pulled up next to his Harley, and there's 2 of them, and said, "Yo, there's Fat Cowboy Bill Watts. He used to be a legend," to his face. And my dad said, "Pull over," and beat the guy to a pulp. And it was the cover of like Tulsa World that Cowboy Bill Watts beat up this All-American college football player. So he had a lot of spunk. Plus, my dad always has a concealed weapon because he believes in concealed weapons. Well, so does Rude. And so Dream was in the office. My dad, they're up at CNN Center, and they're hashing out their stuff. And the basis was my dad said, "I could really give 2 craps how you feel or don't feel. It's fine. This is what you're going to do, and you can suck it. I mean, I'm the captain, so I'm glad to hear what you got to say, but it's not going to change anything." And Dream was watching it, and Dream told me he sees a ping pong match. He's like, Rude's head's shaking, and my dad, he goes, "And I know Cowboy." and he's not having it. And something was said, like my dad said, he goes, we can settle this however you want, professionally or however you want. He goes, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of you, and you're going to lose physically, emotionally, business-wise. You're just going to lose. And Dusty told me, I wish I could remember exactly how he said it. He said, okay, so this is what I thought. I'm seeing this, and so I see this movie playing out. Because now Rick may want to fight him, but he probably ain't going to want to fight him, because who wants to fight him? So now I know Rude has got a gun, and I know your dad's got a gun. So the moral of the story is, you know what happens? The guy that's not in the fight gets shot and killed. He says, about that time, I got him and said, guys, I think you got this handled. He goes, I got the hell out of there. And to hear Dusty Rhodes tell the story, I was in tears, man. I was in tears. And so Rude left. So yeah, they had a lot of heat, and a few things that's pretty crazy, right? So one thing that's crazy, my dad was so pissed that I remember one day he came to me, and it was at center stage. He goes, let me ask you a question. He said, if I put a thing together where we have a tough man tournament, and I take the athletes and I square them off and we do this tough man tournament, he goes, can you promise me that you can beat the hell out of Rude? I said, sir, yeah, I mean, what are we doing? Like tough man gloves, not boxing gloves, right? And I said, he's a hell of a boxer, but that's I said, what are we gonna do? He goes, no, the lineman gloves. I said, yeah. I said, I'll take him. And he went to get that okayed at CNN, at TBS, and they go, wait, are you insane? So you're saying that you want these pro athletes to get together, but actually shoot fight in the ring? And why is this? And he goes, well, I got some talent. I want to teach them things or something like that, or correct or whatever. And they shot it down. So, which is crazy, right? Because 3-4 years later, Jim Ross is up at WWE, and they do the whole angle. Yeah, like the fall brawl, or brawl
for all.
Yeah, brawl for all, right? That concept was made way back when, right? So we're here. I'm hoping things calm down. Well, they're not, and I'm in the locker room. We're on a long road trip. It's the last day. Everyone's beat. Everyone's tired. Everyone's hurt. I remember they were doing construction, and like there's some leaky pipes, and when that's when we had to dress nice, and everything. And you're just beat. You're just tired. You just want to get the last match off, and you want to get home. And so I don't know why I'm moody. At the time I'm tired. I'm getting my butt handed to me in the back, with Rude and Scott Steiner and the people that don't like my dad and all this other stuff. And so I'm just sitting in my locker, and Rude is standing up, smoking a cigarette, and he's talking about Kurt Hennig, his best friend. He's like, yeah, Kurt's a great athlete. I'm a great athlete, Golden Glove boxer, da-da-da-da. He goes, but I'm just here to tell you guys, a boxer will beat a wrestler every day. And as soon as he said that, my ears turned red. I was so mad, because that just goes. It's just. I don't want to hear it, right? I don't want to hear it.
That was before UFC.
Yeah, that's before UFC, right? And so I'm just sitting there. I'm going, okay. So I don't say anything. And he's like, yeah, we've done this several times, and we do this thing where I get on my all fours and he gets on top and he can't hold me down. I escape, And then when he said that, my bullshit meter went through the roof. And I don't know why I said it. I shouldn't have said it. And I just said, like, I had Tourette's. I go, well, then Kurt Hennig is a pussy. And I don't even know if you had a solar eclipse in your life, but when I say everyone was just listening to Rick, and everyone was just, and I really didn't have or need anything to say. I said it because I just couldn't take it. And oh my, he got so, you're talking about my best friend. I'm thinking, you're talking about your best friend, you know? And I said, well, I got to be honest with you. He just sucks as a wrestler then, because if you can escape and all of that, then he's just, you know, he sucks. Well, he was more worried about the guy he was telling his best friend that couldn't hold him down. He was now mad that I'm talking bad about his friend. It's the old thing, like, I can talk bad about my spouse, but you can't. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Like, I can talk bad about my brother. If you say something, I'm gonna knock you out. Well, now he is now in my face. I'm in the locker room, and I'm already thinking, okay, you know, I got dress shoes on, slacks, my back's to the wall, which is okay. If he gets too much closer, I'm gonna be in his hips. I'm gonna rip this man's head off. And about that time, Sting kind of makes his way over, and you know, he's kind of talking, and Rude, you know, walks off, you know, for a second. He's thinking, and Sting goes, Eric, I've never, you know, I've never seen someone take so much shit for so long, and you know, the whole rookie thing, and you just got to keep it. He goes, but you know, dude, this is coming from me to you. Your hazing's done. You don't have to take this shit anymore. Because, bro, leading up to that, I can't tell you all the things that happened. I even had, I I had twice people break glass and put them in my fucking wrestling boots, and then when I would do, put on a wrestling boot, you know, I had that happen twice, and I think it was Sting again when that happened. I didn't say anything, and then I cut myself a little bit, and I emptied my shoe out. He goes, "What's that from?" I'm like, it's the hazing. He goes, "No, we don't haze like that, you know, or whatever." And he said something. So Sting kind of gave the like, "Hey, you don't have to take it." And so as soon as he said that, I go, "Whoa, Rude." you know, no. So what were you saying that about Henning? And Sting, he just lit up. He's like, yeah, no. Now, how did that work with you and Henning? and then he goes, well, you know, I've known Eric since he's 14. You know, I've seen him go, and blah blah blah, and Rude goes, what? And he just got hyped up. It was like a kid in a candy store. So now the Steiners and who everyone's there, they're just dying to see Rude just make a fool of me. And to make a long story short, the first time he got on all fours, and Sting goes, okay, I'm gonna move my hand up and you guys go. And he moves his hand up, and I just I crack his elbow in and face plant him and roll him on his back in about 1.5 seconds. And he just starts going, hold on. And I'm holding him, and I let him go, and I back up like that, because again, it's not that difficult. And not because of Rude, it's just if you don't know how to wrestle, you just don't know how to wrestle. So that, whatever. So he, I thought you were gonna say 1, 2, 3, and Sting goes, oh no, you want me to say 1, 2, 3? Let's do it again. So he goes 1, 2, 3, and I just plant him. Yeah. A matter of fact, that time what I did is I planted him, and then I moved forward like a freestyle, and I did a front face lock and rolled him like 3 times, because in freestyle you get those back exposure points 2 or 3 times, and then choked him a little bit, and he's like, why, yeah, let's do it again. And so I said, dude, we can do this all day long. And so he got on all fours while I went freestyle and put my hands on his back and stood there. He goes, well, what are you doing? I go, well, you're such a stud. I go, I'm going to go freestyle on this neutral position, not collegiate. So let's do freestyle. He goes, oh, I'll grab your feet. I'll jump up. I'm just saying that I can escape. I go, I understand. This should be very easy for you, which I shouldn't have done, because it's just taking advantage of someone that doesn't understand. So I got there so that when he did go to explode up, I just grabbed him the hips, elevated him, separated his shoulder basically on the concrete, let his head bounce. And that was about time Sting thought he saw enough and all that. So Rude gets up, he's hurt, goes out of the locker room, and I find out later on that he'd walked outside, and a mark had said something to him, and he hit him in the face, and it broke his palate. and he ended up getting sued and lost a lawsuit on that one. But that was before. Later on, I went to go make a call on the phone, and it was weird because, you know, I got grabbed while I'm on the phone and got elevated. Well, as soon as I got elevated, I grapevine the inside of his leg, not knowing who it was, but it didn't feel too tight. Well, I think he was trying to grab me with one hand. He goes, yeah, in the shadows, what would you do now? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I got your grapevine. Just put my hand, pushed his face up. He goes, gosh, damn, kid, really? I'm like, sir, you know, it's not, I've done this my whole life. Then that I think is when everything changed for me and him. And we did some storylines and some angles, and he just became a mentor, like incredible mentor. And he'd go to Grizzly sometimes. We'd wrestle and like, hey, listen, you know, I know I'm supposed to beat this kid in 6 minutes. Get us like let me do like 18. And then Grizzly like, hey man, you know, I mean, what do you want to do? Well, let's give him some time to learn. And then he would go out there and push the time limit, and work with me. And it was it was just awesome. I mean, you know, and again, you know, turned out to be fantastic friends. Enjoyed the guy, and all that. But yeah, it was that's what happened.
What did you think about the way he passed away in the overdose? And there's rumors that it was due to like injectable Viagra that caused some type of infection that led to some type of amputation.
That's exactly what I heard. One person said it was some kind of Viagra. Another person said that he decided to, you know, put a steroid or whatever. And man, bro, I gotta be honest with you. By that time, it was just so sad that one of the best workers in the business at that time, and you know, going back in history, he's just a phenomenal, and not because I got along with him, he was a phenomenal worker when I didn't like him. He was a phenomenal worker, and everyone knew it. Everyone knew how good he was. Like, the guys that are good are just good, right? You know, it's not rocket science, right? So, you know, as soon as I heard a few of the rumors, I think that I was so sad about it that I didn't even take the time. You know, I mean, now it kind of makes you mad because is it true? Is it not true? And who in the hell cares? I mean, so I don't know. You know, I mean, why did he die? I don't know. He's dead. You know, so.
And yeah. I think he was only 40, so that's the real sad part about it.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. I mean, think about all the great matches we would have seen, you know, with him. But I mean, look how many guys passed for one reason or another. You know, we lost a lot of incredible matches in a short period of time. That, you know, about a 10-year span.
Vader's another guy that passed that I've heard you say you've had quite a few experiences with.
Vader was a beautiful, beautiful person. Leon, an incredible athlete, a beast. Literally, that guy would throw up almost every night before his match. And he told me it went back when he amateur wrestled and played football. He said, I just get so hyped, Eric. I puke. And there's one night where they were going to do an angle, and he was going to come in on a match, beat Sting up, I think, and hang him over the rope or something like that. But as he's beating Sting, a whole bunch of people start feeding in to try to stop Vader or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it happened. And he said, kid, let me explain something to you. He goes, sometimes I lose it out there, man, and I get intense. He said, so maybe he was hitting the ring, right? And he was crushing people on the way, something like that. He said, I'm going to throw you off. He goes, I'm going to throw you off, duck my clothesline. I'll hit the next person and just slide through the ropes. And he said, dude, I get jacked up out there, and, you know, I'm capable of taking your head off. I'm like, first of me, I was going, well, I could take it. And the second time, I'm like, no, you know, I was the match. I was the match after on TV when Vader picked up the kid, chokeslammed him, broke his neck, and then picked him up again, and the kid was limp and dropped him right back on his head. They literally had to pull off all the ring ropes, put the stretcher in, take the kid out. And then they came back to me and said, hey, it'll take us a few minutes, put the ring ropes up. We got to go. This is TV. I'm like, okay, so this kid's probably dead, and let's just keep on. And I'm like, okay, here we go, and staying more up. So I think I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I'll just slide on this one, right? Yeah, he took a liking to me. Other than he wasn't happy with me because at one time because he rode the road with Harley, and so when we went back to Harley State and we were wrestling, Harley actually invited me because I knew his wife, and Harley a few times when my dad couldn't make some of the big tournaments, amateur wrestling tournaments, he would find out if Harley was going to be at that tournament, amateur wrestling tournament, or if he could come. And so, like Tulsa Nationals, Harley showed up to be my in-corner coach, which he laughed because my dad there for a while, towards my ladder things. I don't know. He had a different thing. He didn't want us just to pin people. So I can't remember what he wanted. We had to take someone down 5 times before we pinned them or something like that, which I don't know what that was proving, other than he wanted us to be very good on our feet. So he wanted us to do it, right? But I mean, if you take a guy down 5 times and you let him go 5 times, you get 2 points for takedown. You get 5. I mean, you get 1 for escape. That's 10-5. I mean, God forbid you mess up. It'd be easy if the guy took you down and pointed your back. You're 5-5-10, whatever. But that was his rule. So that's what we did. And I remember him saying, "Well, you got this world champ guy from California." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you have to take him down 5 times." And I go, "Are you really kidding me right now?" I said, "If I get a chance to stick this guy, and I'm going to stick him as fast as possible." And he goes, "Oh, I can't do that." I go, "Oh, I was just trying." He looked at me. He goes, "Kid, I won't tell your dad if you don't." And so I think I went out there and got the guy in like 13 seconds, 17 seconds. But I was so enthralled that I could go out and really like compete, And so he was my superstar. I was hoping my dad sometimes couldn't be at the matches, and Harley would be called in. But him and his wife, so wonderful, and I'd hang out with them. Well, on that tour, Harley wanted me to meet him. Like if the ring was going to be up at 11, even if we had to be there at 6, he wanted me to find out the ring crew, tell him when they're going to be here, and then he would meet. Well, then Harley would make Leon come to the ring, and this big human would be laying on these metal chairs, and you're like, "You're an idiot. You're an." He just ripped me verbally, like, "Hey, couldn't you pick someone else?" I said, "Sir, I mean, he's asking me. I've got to. I want to. I mean, it's a legend. It's a mentor." He goes, "Find another mentor. I got to stay with this guy. You're an idiot. You need to learn faster," or whatever he's saying. He's just talking stuff. And but he was so good to me. A matter of fact, that's how I went to that's how I went on the catch tour in Bremen, Germany. Is Vader was supposed to be on that tour, and Otto Vance had asked him, "Who would you like to take your place?" And he said Eric Watts. And then so he said, "I think he's got a big show for Vern Gagne." So Otto Vance was, very good friends with Vern, and Vern said, "Oh my gosh, the kid's good, but he can come for the 3 weeks, but he can't do your big show." He goes, "It's okay." And so I did 3 weeks there, and then flew back to do a show for Vern Gagne at a casino in Minnesota. But I got to meet, Fit Finley and just I could go on and on and on and on and on about all the Tony Sinclairs and all these guys, and I got to learn so much about the German, or not the catch. I got to learn so much, and clearly that's because of Vader. Vader mentioned my name, and I got to. It changed my. Another thing that I'll always remember is the catch experience. The guys I met, some of the guys that came over because of some of the words I put in for those people. Not because I'm cool, because they were so good. Franz Schumann, which didn't come over, but oh my gosh, so many guys, incredible guys wrestling there. Fit Finley. Kane, so that was because of Vader. I mean, had he not put a good word in, I wouldn't have been there.
Well, I think we're going to have to do a part 2 another time to get into more details of other stuff. But could you sum up why the Techno Team 2000 gimmick didn't work in WWE?
The Techno Team 2000 did not work. I believe it didn't work for one reason. Well, I don't know. Okay, one reason is I was going to WWE because WWE made you try out no matter what, right? So yeah, I was at WCW, blah blah blah, but Ross and those guys said, hey, it's you got to come, da 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 da. And last second, I had a former football player that was my tight end at the University of Louisville. Then he went to Indianapolis Colts, Miami Dolphins, Dallas Cowboys, but he just couldn't stay on a team. And he was struggling and needed help. And his mom called me and said, hey, what can you do? He's a great athlete. So I got him a training deal at WCW. He was there for 2 or 3 years. WCW kept on saying that they would use him. As a matter of fact, the crazy thing about it is, after 2 years being there, they were definitely going to use him. He was at Disney, and he wrestled a guy, which is from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, we played high school ball in the same town, Bill Goldberg. And he wrestled a guy named Bill Goldberg and beat Bill Goldberg. And they said, hey, Chad, we want to change something in your outfit or something, and canned they canned the match. Chad lost his mind. He's like, I have been here for 2 or 3 years. This is my shot. He doesn't know what, it's nothing about Bill Goldberg, right? He knows Bill because I know Bill and da da da. But it wasn't about the match. He was chomping at the bit to finally get his break. It pissed him off so much. He came back. He goes, I can't take it. I found a loophole in the contract. We took him up to WWE. We tried out, and I was told, I said, hey, your buddy comes up and he looks bad. You're both gone. And the tryout went phenomenal. Vince loved us. We came from the tryout, and he asked us to sign the contracts right there. Chad, Vince was excited. The outfits weren't done. Asked us to come up and wrestle Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden. Chad had some butterfly issues, and just messed up 2 really basic moves. I think that threw a crack in it, right? So they were kind of eyeing him. But then we went on a run, and we were literally told that we were going to get the belts, which, what do you say? It's improper. Bart and Billy Gunn were phenomenal. They fought to get the belts, and they were going to go on the Europe tour. We were in Canada. Vince said, switch tickets the night before everyone left. They switched tickets, and I'm like, that's not good. That's not good, because we just got here. We've been here for 3 months. They're going to drop the belts on us. These guys deserve the belt. We are going to get thrashed politically. And by that night, Gorilla Monsoon came, knocked on our door, switched the tickets back. We were on the Canada tour, WWE tour. As soon as we got back from the tour, instead we wrestled Bart and Billy, which were going to drop the belts to us, beat us, and then we were sent to Memphis. There's rumors of why that might happen, but they said, hey, we need to get Chad a little more experience before he's on TV. We got great hopes for you. We get to Memphis, and Randy Hales and those guys, they're outlaws. So they're like, well, Eric, we like the tag thing, but could you wrestle singles too? I said, I'll wrestle singles as long as we wrestle tags. And then before you know it, we're there 2 weeks, and they're like, nah, you just wrestle singles. We only use Chad. I go, you do understand, don't you? We're here from Vince McMahon. And Randy's like, yeah, they'll understand. And I just got so frustrated. And he wasn't ready for the sport, meaning mentally. He wasn't ready. He was a football player. He didn't understand, why do I gotta go shake Shawn Michaels' hand and Undertaker's hand every time we come? Well, because that's what everyone does. You go in and shake every person's hand. We're a rookie at WWE to show respect. They don't want to shake my hand. They don't know. And I would tell this guy, and then I would get people that were cool enough to pull me aside and go, bro, your partner's getting major heat. I'm like, he's just shy. And they go, that's not going to work. So before you know it, they get rid of him. And then they told me that Vince was excited, and he had an all new gimmick for me, but it would take 6 months or 7 months. And I just said, and I personally talked to Vince. I said, listen, you said to me, which people say that people say that I heard about Vince. Like, he'll say something, do something else. Vince McMahon told me when I signed my agreement, he goes, if you are ever not happy here, Eric, you tell me and I'll let you out of your agreement. And I'd heard stories about Vince. I called him and I said, I can't wait. I waited for the Techno Team thing. Then the Techno Team thing happened. We're on a small run, decent run, looking good. Now we're in Memphis. We're playing games in Memphis. Blah blah blah. I got to stay on the road. I am still learning. I want to be as good as I can be. I want to be one of the best if possible. It takes time in the ring. I was averaging like 300. 285 to 306 matches a year. I had to stay on that. I could not just take 6 months off here, 8 months off there. I'm brand new in the freaking business. I'm only in the business now, 5-6 years or whatever it is. Come on, And he said, you know what, your contract's up. He goes, I think that you are going to be happy with the contract I'm gonna send you. And, because the first contract I signed was what everyone else signs, and I don't know how many people know this, but when you sign, and I'm talking about 90% of the talent, you sign for 2 years, I think, and you're guaranteed 3 matches at $150 a day. You'll always make more than that, but that was his way that if someone got an attitude, he could just leave them at home and not pay them, right? He said, no, I'm going to make you a nice contract, and I'm going to send it to you. He goes, I'm also going to send your release. Because that was my word. Whatever you want, do it. But I look forward to this gimmick I've got for you. So we'll talk soon. And I got both of them, and the offer was absolutely incredible, like you said. And but I signed the release and sent it to him because I just thought at that time I had to get on the road. I am losing mat time, and there's only so much you can do at a school per se compared to wrestling a match with a Rude or an Arn Anderson or whoever, right? I mean, you know this. I mean, you can go and work out the school all you want, but when you're under the lights in front of fans wrestling in real time, one match is equivalent to weeks or months, And so I made the decision, right or wrong, and I left.
And Memphis didn't actually pay back then, unlike the development now.
Well, yeah. Again, Vince.
Couple hundred a week, maybe.
Yeah, but Vince took care of us big time. We got paid really nice from WWE to be there, and Memphis was trying to pay us. And you're so right. I think we wrestled like 5 nights a week, and the road was brutal. And I think that they were trying to pay us like $125, And I just felt horrible because I'm like, guys, we don't need the money. We're getting paid really, really good. So, man, I don't know what to tell you, but it just didn't work. It was just that small town and Randy Hales. And I have no idea what the concept was. I really have no idea what his concept was. It's like, oh, Eric, man, we can draw big with you as a singles. Okay. That's a compliment. Do you know why we're here? And I said, I'll wrestle tag and I'll wrestle singles. I'll do whatever the hell you want. But if I don't get my partner more tag team and timing and experience, we're not going back to WWE.
So they never told you what that gimmick was, I guess. Well, no one will ever know.
No, you are right. No one will ever know. I never asked.
Where can fans follow you if they want to look you up on social media?
The easiest way is my Facebook page, but I'm in a transition right now. Like my Instagram is the Eric Watts. My Facebook is private, and I'm maxed at 5,000 people. But I'd love to shoot you something when I change up my Facebook so that it's open to everybody. Because I've been maxed at, almost ever since I've done that at the 5,000. But yeah, I'm gonna get more into the social media. I tweet some, but my daughter and my son, they're so into it. So my daughter was the one posting this show on like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook for me. The other night I gave her all my passwords. I said, listen, you gotta get me modern and I can't remember what her word was. She said, "Wow, your Facebook is kind of what." I can't remember the word. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. And she's like, "No, Dad, you know, clearly, we got to bring you up to speed." So, Facebook, they can shoot me a friend request, but most of the time I can't. I'll go through every once in a while, like once every 6 months if I have time. I'll go cancel like 200 or 300 people if I haven't heard from them, and get another 200 or 300 people. But I'm gonna make it public, and but the Instagram, for sure, they can check on me.
And do you still talk to your dad regularly?
Me and my dad talk almost every week. You know, his health is pretty rough. He just got COVID for the first time like 2 weeks ago. One of his lungs became paralyzed for no reason a year ago, so he's on oxygen a lot. His back is brutal, bro. He's had surgeries like 6 years ago, and everything looked good, and he's doing a walker, you know, and he's just in constant pain, and he can barely breathe. But I call him all the time, and let me tell you what. No matter whether he can breathe or not breathe, University of Oklahoma plays football, basketball, baseball, badminton, tiddlywinks. I'll get a call about those Sooners. You know, it's like Jim Ross, right? You know, anything that happens on the Sooners, I don't know who's the bigger fan, him or Ross. I really don't know.
Well, if he's ever feeling in better health and you're around him, hopefully maybe one day both of you could come on. But
yeah,
no expectations if he's not feeling well. We hope that he recovers, and we'll let you close this off with whatever you want to tell the fans for this time.
Man, listen, you know, the biggest thing is it's an honor and a treat to be on your show, number one. Heard so much about it, checked on some of the interviews, and like I tell people, you know, it's people like you, right? I was taught this at an early age. It's people like you that take the time to interview, to talk, to ask the questions, and that help promote and keep wrestling alive. You know, yes, you got TV. Yes, you have what you see on TV, but who's telling the history? Who's telling the stories? Who's going back to even talk about territories and different matches and concepts and angles and where it's at? It's you. And we need many of you, because, you know, some person might like listening to this person and not listening to that person. We need people to promote wrestling in many different, let's say, languages and types. And so I really appreciate what you do and the time. And you know, I see your ratings. You're one of the more successful doing it, brother. So you're doing it big. And I really appreciate you asking me on the show. I will say, keep in contact with me, man. You know, if I can grab the old man and he would mind getting on for 20 or 30 minutes, we'll get him on. But listen, I'll be on with him. I am not saying shit. I just want to hear you ask questions. I want to hear him talk, because I mark out for the man's stories. He's pretty incredible, man.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest